Welcome back, everyone. So now that we've understood how to work with Apollo and GraphQL, let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages and why you as a developer or as a team may want a GraphQL and Apollo React application versus a Redux React application. So first off, let me address Redux versus GraphQL and Apollo. Apollo seeks to act as a single source of truth for the data and state on your application. The same way that Redux does, where essentially the whole idea is that all of your application state of the data that you're fetching is stored in Redux. As we noticed with the caching and the actual fetching, this is exactly what Apollo is trying to do as well. As a result, an application that uses Apollo does not need Redux. When it comes to more minutia details, such as what we did with context, you can still keep context and utilize context in order to make some of these storage options, or in order to utilize context as a mounter to make the initial call in the first place at the top level. All of these patterns are still possible when it comes to coordinating the actual fetches and when the state gets stored and etc. But the actual single source of truth, Apollo is now the single source of truth, not Redux anymore. So as a result, what are those advantages and disadvantages? Well, one big thing about Apollo and GraphQL is that in order for you on the front end to use GraphQL, your backend must be set up similarly to spit out GraphQL. It must support GraphQL. And that requires a lot of work in order to set up all of these queries and all of these type definitions and everything in between as well. There's a lot of code to update on a server in order for it to be a GraphQL server. So unless your company and your backend teams are familiar and willing to navigate through the complexity of upgrading to GraphQL, it is not just something you can implement on the front end. And that's very important. Notice how we keep referencing back to the GraphQL playground in order to understand what we're fetching, how we're fetching it, and what the shape looks like. The advantage of this is that it becomes much more transparent to us on the front end. But the disadvantage is that this requires a constant coordination of the backend team in order to set up the backend to give us all of these benefits and perks. So that's not just something that we can decide to do exclusively on the front end. We have to get the backend teams on board as well, and they have to learn how to write in the GraphQL language. They have to understand the complexities of performance and how to improve it all on the server side. All we need to learn is just Apollo client. But other than that, for us, it's actually not that complicated. The large bulk of the complexity actually lives in the backend of setting up GraphQL servers. So that's one big disadvantage. The other one, of course, is that we have to get familiar with writing these GraphQL queries. While working with it, it seems rather intuitive, and it's designed to be. Apollo has actually come a very long way throughout the years. Before, it was way more complicated, and it was almost like writing backend GraphQL code on the front end. But now it's essentially all been isolated and extrapolated and hidden away from us, so that all we're really passing are just queries. And then, are you trying to make a query? Use the useQuery hook. Are you trying to use a mutation? Use the mutation hook. It's very flowed well now with the React ecosystem. But still, you do need to learn how to use this pattern, and it is different from web development anywhere else. So that's another thing, is that there is an additional learning curve, and a lot of different developers are very comfortable with the Flux architecture pattern that Redux has come from. Redux has also been scaled enormously across numerous applications. GraphQL has as well. It's come a long way, and so has Apollo. In fact, React is almost designed to work with GraphQL because Facebook also created GraphQL. Facebook created React. Facebook created GraphQL. So in turn, there is a lot of harmony in the way that they're designing both of these tools per se. But once again, a lot of the time, it comes down to the team, and it comes down to the scalability of the team, not necessarily the technology, but are there enough developers who are more comfortable with the Redux architecture at scale, or are they comfortable with GraphQL? So those are additional considerations that go beyond just the technology that a good developer must think about before jumping on any new hot technology. But that's my piece. Hopefully now you understand some of the discussions around GraphQL versus Redux, and also when you want to use GraphQL yourself. If you want to use it in your own projects, feel free to do so. Just understand you'll have to learn the backend of GraphQL as well. But other than that, using it on the front end, as you can see, is very simple. So that wraps up our GraphQL section.